Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I'm taking you through the top 10 cards of Ancient Origins. Ancient Origins is the brand new set from the Pokémon trading card game. Well, I say brand new. If you're listening around about August 2015, it's brand new. If you are listening in the future, it might indeed be years old. But hey ho, what we're going to be looking at today is the top 10 cards from that particular set. As always, if you've got any arguments, hit me up in the comments, but please give me a complete top 10 so that I can then argue with yours. It'll be fun, like a game. And as always, you can find me on Twitter, @TheWassy, if you want to make your argument a little more personal. So, let's start off then from Ancient Origins, looking at some of the cards that didn't quite make the cut. These aren't bad cards, I just don't think they fit as some of the top cards in the set, or in the top 10. Please don't hate me for that, or at least give me a top 10 in the comments if you're going to argue. First up, Ariados. I love Ariados. It is a case of your active is poisoned and your opponent's active is poisoned. Now, Hypnotoxic Laser has for quite a while now been automatic poison in a trainer card, and it's been amazing. Ariados, he's a stage 1, and we don't have Vermac City Gym now to make the poison do 3 between turns instead of 1. And as I said, it's a stage 1. It takes up a whole bunch of room in your deck, and I don't think that many decks are going to absolutely love it. This is one of the ones I am most prepared to be wrong about. I could easily see me being wrong about this one. I just don't think... I've been doing up a lot of grass deck lists after this set is revealed. It's a very grass-heavy set. And in most of mine, I'm finding room for a 1-1 line, at the most. Which means I'm not going to be using it constantly in every game. Another card that didn't quite make the cut was Ace Trainer. And this makes both players shuffle their hands into their deck. If you're losing, you can play this. If you're winning, you can't. Or if you're drawing, you can't. You draw 6 cards, your opponent draws 3. It's awesome if you're behind, but it's no N. N just having been rotated out, or being rotated out in September. The problem with it is that you're not always going to be able to take advantage of this. It's only when you're losing. It's a dead card in your hand on the first turn of the game. And if your opponent's down to 1 prize, you don't want them to have 3 cards in hand. You want to end them to 1. So for all those reasons, I think it's going to be the kind of card people play one of in a deck and then grab back with the S-Seeker as and when they need it. I don't think it's one of the 10 best cards in the set. I should have mentioned this at the very beginning. This is my initial impression. The set has only just released, so I may well start doing a series of updated top 5 or top 10 cards in the set after we've seen a whole bunch of tournaments, because I could very easily be wrong about some of these. Level Ball did not make the cut because it only searches Pokemon with 90 HP or less, and we don't have a huge amount of decks in the format at the moment for which we're going to want Pokemon that have 90 HP or less. The big reason why Level Ball was good first time round, well, one of the many reasons, was that we had Giratina, who was a 90 HP EX, and before that we weren't really using all that many EXs, or, a little while before that. Nowadays, we've got Shaman, who's got 110 HP, he ain't making the cut. Sorry about that, I mean no disrespect. Another Pokemon which came oh so close but didn't quite make the set, the top 10, and to be honest, these last two, it's not really that they're not good enough, it's just that they got jumped ahead by other cards that I liked better. So Metagross has an ability which allows you to switch your active and makes your opponent switch their active. It's basically Escape Rope, and as we've seen with Escape Rope, sometimes you want to switch but you want your opponent to stay, sometimes you want your opponent to switch but you want to stay. It's not going to be an ability to use every turn, although it is very useful. It's also got an attack that does 80 damage, or if you discard all the energy, it does 160. Pop a Muscle Band on that bad boy, you're doing 180, and you're one-hit KOing EXs. It can use double colourless energy, and it can use the Stage 1 Bronzong to accelerate metal energy. Will it be a replacement for Dialga EX in these metal decks, given that it is a Stage 2? It's one of the few things holding it back. Stage 2s can be cumbersome to get out, they do take a lot of space in your deck, but the fact of the matter is, it's got a useful ability and an attack that can one-hit KO EXs. The last Pokemon which almost but didn't quite make the cut was Ampharos EX. And honestly, he's just not quite as good as the Mega EXs that did make the cut. I like Mega Ampharos EX. The weakness holds it back. I think fighting's going to be quite good this format. And the attack, I don't know. It's good. I just don't like it as good as the other Mega EXs. It's as simple as that. So coming in at number 10, a Pokemon that I thought was going to be much higher in the list until I actually started writing down the list and started putting them out, and I really couldn't put it any higher. Vespiquen, my personal favourite from the set, but I don't think the best card in the set. It is essentially a reprint of the Plasma Freeze Flareon. You do 20 damage for a double colourless energy, plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. You use cards like Ultra Ball, and maybe the new Unown from this set, or maybe Battle Compressor, to get cards in the discard pile and do a whole heap of damage. We have the Flareon, Jolteon and Vaporeon from this set, who have abilities that will make Vespiquen into Fire, Lightning or Water type Stage 1, and it can do a fair bit of damage. By the end of the game, you should be taking your last 2 prizes by one hit KOing an EX. Because of cards like Forest of Giant Plants, like these Evolutions, like Unown, like I've all just mentioned, it really is a card. I think it's going to be much better than Flareon was when it was out, and I thought Flareon was pretty gosh darn useful. In at number 9, Faded Town, another card, and this is going to be... There is much to give in the top 10 of this set. There are a lot of cards that are all really closely bundled together. Now, Faded Town is a card which could be really good or really bad. On my podcast PTCGRadio, on the most recent episode, week 156, I talked about Faded Town because I went through in a fair bit of detail all of the EXs and trainers from the set. I encourage you to look that podcast up. And when I talked about Faded Town, I got an email from, or a Facebook message from my very good friend Nick Pierce, who basically told me I was underselling it. So he is probably going to disagree with the number 9 ranking. Between turns, you put 2 damage counters on every Mega EX, which means after my turn, it gets 2 damage counters, after your turn, it gets 2 damage counters, and carry on. This card's usefulness is going to be directly proportional to how good EXs or Mega EXs are in this particular format. It's good with cards like Giratina EX, which stop you replacing stadiums, and it could well be a staple in that deck. Outside of that, as I said, it just depends on which EXs are going to be seeing a lot of play. In at number 9, Mega Sceptile, and this one I actually think I might have just a little bit too high. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Sceptile EX, but he evolves into Mega Sceptile EX, and that's where I want to look at right now. He is a Grass-type Mega EX, and he's got the ability Theta Stop. Now, I believe it was episode 155 of PTCGRadio. I talked about Theta Stop in a huge amount of detail. It's not enough time to be going into it now, but let's just say it stops some really nice abilities of your Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon, having any effect on you. And it's got 1 attack. Now it attacks for 2 energy, basic or otherwise. And it can use cards like Mega Turbo, which means you can get him going in 1 turn. That's one of the things that makes him better than things like Ampharos, who didn't make the cut. He can go in 1 turn because of Mega Turbo. 100 damage, and you can attach 2 grass energy, and if you attach them to any Pokemon, you completely heal them. Now, there aren't going to be that many instances where you're going to need to heal Pokemon. Think of how often you've actually got damaged Pokemon on your bench. It will see some usefulness, but not a huge amount. However, just being able to attach 2 extra energy per turn is absolutely huge. And 100 damage, it's not a huge amount of damage. I don't like the damage output, but I love the fact that you're doing it for 2 energy, and that's what brings him up at number 8. At number 7, we have Giratina, an EX that I'm unsure about. Now, again, he's another Pokemon that does 100 damage, but there's more to it than that. He's got an ability, which means he's essentially immune to Mega Evolve Pokemon. That's incredibly useful if any of these Mega Evolutions get good. But his attack, now it takes 100 damage, but again we've got Mega Turbo, and we can use double colourless energy, and we can use double dragon energy, and we can use the Reshiram that allows you to attach a fire energy. So we've got options for accelerating energy here. But when you do 100 damage, your opponent can play no Pokemon tools, no special energy, and no stadium cards from their hand. And it's an effect on the player, so switching the active Pokemon will do nothing here. Your opponent cannot get around this. Now, it means all they can really play is supporters, items other than tools, and basic energy. You combine this with the new Vileplume from this set, and your opponent has just got supporters and basic energy. That is going to leave them with not a huge amount to do for their turn, and it's going to be a huge amount of fun for you. Coming in at number 6, Hex Maniac, a card that I am very unsure about, but just on potential alone, he's got to make it in at number, or she's got to make it in at number 6. It's a supporter card that effectively turns off all abilities until the end of your opponent's next turn. And this is going to be very useful for turning off abilities like Vileplume, and I know I keep mentioning Vileplume, I assure you we will get there in a minute. But it turns off all of your opponent's abilities. If you're facing a Vileplume deck, then it will buy you a turn of trainers, but it would also do things like allow you to hit Pyroar with a basic, or turn off your opponent's abilities which are going to do you damage, maybe stop Crawdaunt discarding energy. It really is quite a fun little supporter card. The thing you've got to realise about this, it turns off abilities from when you play it until the end of your opponent's next turn. So if you've got any abilities you want to use, you'd better use them before you play Hex Maniac. A card I am a huge fan of comes in at number 5, Unown. It is basically a reprint of the old Unown R card. First things first, make sure you remember it only works on your bench, not in the active, and then it's very simple. You discard it, you draw a card. Firstly, it thins your deck, it gives consistency, it helps you to run through your deck a little bit faster. It's not an item card, so it means that you can use it to draw cards when you're under trainer lock, but also for decks like Vespiquen, where you want to have your Pokemon in the discard pile, it can help to accelerate getting them in there. In at number 4, Hoopa. And one thing I will say about Hoopa is don't rush to get a huge amount of these. It's coming out in a tin. We don't like the attack. The attack is garbage. What we do like about Hoopa is the ability. It allows you to search for free Pokémon EX other than Hoopa. So you can chain these to get basically infinite EXs out. But in any EX heavy deck, it's going to be absolutely huge. Imagine being able to search for a Rayquaza EX, a Mega Rayquaza EX, and then a Shaymin to draw more cards. And that's from a Pokemon's ability, ladies and gentlemen. That isn't from a supporter or anything like that. The other thing which we've got to mention about Hoopa, he is a psychic type Pokemon, which means his ability will not be turned off by Wobbuffet, who does feature to be a counter to things like Shaymin in the upcoming metagame. In at number 3, and this is the last card I think anyone's going to argue with. I think numbers 1 and 2 are really set as the top 2 cards from this set. Honestly, from 4 downwards, from 4 to 10, I could almost have just put them in a bag and picked them out at random. But number 3, I am quite certain about number 3. I love number 3. It's Mega Tyranitar EX. Now, I don't like the fighting weakness because we've got a whole bunch of good fighting cards in this format. But I absolutely love everything else about him. He's got the Fated Double Ancient trait, which allows him to have up to 2 Pokemon tool cards attached. One of the worst things about Mega EX is you've got to use Spirit Link and you can't attach another tool. Not with Mega Tyranitar, ladies and gentlemen, which means you can use a weakness policy to get rid of his bad weakness as well as having his Spirit Link on him. I love this Fated Double Ancient trait. But I also love his attack. 110 damage, plus 60 for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. 2 damage counters means you do 230 damage, but they'll have 20 damage on, so it puts them up to 250. Best uses for getting the damage counters on there for the time being are probably a Crobat Golbat combination, or indeed Fortress. I love this attack. Now, he does have an attack cost of 4, but you've got double colourless energy, you've got Mega Turbo, and if you're playing an expanded, you've got Dark Patch as well. So it's not your average 4 cost attack, it's going to be easier to get out. In at number 2, and I said about the 1 and 2 being set in stone, you could switch them around, but in at number 2, I have got Vileplume. I am absolutely convinced that Vileplume is going to have a big effect on our format. Quite simply, it is, in any way that matters, a reprint of the Undaunted Vileplume. It blocks trainers on both sides of the field. It means that nobody can play trainers anymore. And we've seen from cards like Seismitoad EX how brutal trainer lock can be. You can combine this with a card like Giratina to just have a huge lock going on. Or you can use cards like Excelgor or Vanillux to go and get yourself some paralysis going on. And very, very quickly indeed, you are going to find that your opponent is going to find that they can't really do anything. This is a hugely, hugely exciting and interesting card. In at number 1, and I'm convinced this is the best card in the set, Forest of Giant Plants. And the reason it goes ahead of Vileplume is Forest of Giant Plants is one of the reasons why Vileplume is so good. Now, I have given you 3 evolving grass Pokemon in this list, Vespiquen, Sceptile and Vileplume, who I think are going to be good from this set. Forest of Giant Plants helps all of them because it allows you to evolve your grass Pokemon as and when you gosh darned well feel like it. It's like Broken Time Space back in the day. Now, it's only for grass Pokemon, but the possibilities here are endless. In Expanded, people have already realised that Shiftry can be used to, get rid of your opponent's Pokemon on the very first turn of the game using the ability, because you can get it evolved on turn 1, and you can get many of them evolved turn 1. And because it's an ability, you can use it going first. Shiftry is getting buzz in Expanded, Vileplume and Vespiquen are getting buzz in Standard. This is why it is the number 1 card in the set. And if you're wondering why I've put a dark Shiftry up on the screen here, it's the card from which you are evolving, not into which you are evolving, that's relevant here. So you can evolve from a grass into a non-grass, but you cannot evolve from a non-grass into a grass using Forest of Giant Plants. As always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this video. Stick your comments down. Were there any cards you thought I rated too high? Were there any cards you thought I left off that I shouldn't have? Would you like to give me your own top 10? Because I would pretty much like to see it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'd like to see that. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel, make sure you like this video, and make sure you check out my video games channel, Wassy Plays. It's just like this, but about video games. And I have a sneaking suspicion that if you try it, you just might like it. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.